You know, whenever I give a talk at I.O., I always ask to be first thing in the morning because I know only the most motivated, smartest, best-looking audience comes. Give yourselves a round of applause for being here. So we're going to talk about building apps for the Google Assistant. If you know nothing about building apps for the Google Assistant, you're in the right place. This is meant to be an orientation talk to give you a sense for what scenarios work, how to accomplish it, and then hopefully at the end of this talk will intrigue you to want to drill in more and find out more information. So I'm Brad Abrams, and I'm a product manager on the Google Assistant team.
I'm Vera. I'm on the product partnerships team on the Assistant team.
I'm Adam Coimbra, and I'm a partner technology manager on the Assistant.
So when Sundar launched the Assistant at I.O. last year, he did so for one reason, and that was to build a conversational interface to all of Google. And we wanted that to be a single interface regardless of what context you're in, what device you're in, or what task you're trying to accomplish. So the way we think about the Assistant is that it's a conversation, and it's a conversation between you and Google designed to help you get things done in your world. And one of the reasons I'm personally so excited about the Assistant is it builds on Google's long history of creating ecosystems. And that history started actually with Google Search, where we created a strong ecosystem between publishers and readers. It continues with YouTube, where we have a strong ecosystem between creatives and their viewers. And of course, many of you know on Play, we created an ecosystem between Android app developers and their users. It's that exact same kind of ecosystem we're creating with the Google Assistant. And that ecosystem is enabled by a platform we call Actions on Google. So you might be interested in Actions on Google because it enables you to connect with a whole new set of users in different contexts, in different places, everywhere the Google Assistant is. You can also connect to your existing users in new and different ways. And finally, it gives you an opportunity to innovate in a whole new computing domain, this domain of conversational interface, which we'll talk a lot more about in this talk. So since we launched the platform in December, we couldn't be more happy with the variety and creativity of apps for the Assistant that we've seen. Whether you want to order a pizza from Domino's or play Name That Tune with Song Pop, you can do a wide variety of activities. But I want to drill in on one in particular today to kind of give you the anatomy of one of these Assistant apps. How do they work? What's really under the covers? So some of you may have noticed, in addition to the Android version of the Google I.O. app, we now have a Google Assistant I.O. app as well. So you're able to say something, talk to your assistant and say, okay, Google, talk to Google I.O. 17. And then the assistant looks at all the ways it could possibly respond, all the context, all the possible different options, and picks the very best one for this user at this time. In this case, because the user used the app name explicitly, I.O. 17, then that's like a URL or tapping on a shortcut on the desktop. And it brings us directly into our Google I.O. 17 app. The user hears the assistant give an introduction, and then hears an earcon. So earcon is to the ear what an icon is to the eye. It's a visual audio distinction to help the users understand there's a transition happening. And then there's a change in the voice, and the icons change, and now there's a two-way dialogue between the Google I.O. app and the user. And that two-way dialogue continues until either party is ready to exit. So that's how it looks on Google Home. But of course, we knew we were launching for phones here at the event, so we wanted to also make it work well on the phones. And there you see it working on the phones, suggestion chips and images and whatnot. In addition to that, we also wanted to let you book seats. Some of you may have noticed some of the sessions yesterday were kind of full. You might know you can actually reserve seats to the sessions. So we wanted to let you do that transaction as well, to book a seat. So when a session comes up, you can click the suggestion chip, reserve a seat. And if you click that, we use our new seamless account linking to have you sign in. And then you, even if you haven't created an account, with just 2 taps, you can go and create an account. Then you see your receipt, and of course it's free to reserve a seat, so that's fine, and the transaction is complete. So actually, what we're gonna do is walk through the end-to-end experience of building that app I just showed you in this session. I'm gonna start off by talking about the design process. How did we come up with that app? What was the design that went into it? Adam then is going to go through the hardcore development of it, both the natural language understanding part as well as the transactional part of it, and show you in code how to go build that. And then Vera is going to show how to make that app discoverable, how you can get people to actually use that app. Okay, let's drill into design. But first, do we need design at all? I mean, these conversational apps, these assistant apps, they're just chatbots, right? It's text input, text output. There's no images, there's no forms to lay out, there's no CSS to do. Do you need design at all? Well, consider a very simple case. Say we wanted to reserve a number of seats, say number of seats at a restaurant. How might we handle this case? We say for how many? Look at the wide variety of ways that a user might respond to this query. How are we supposed to handle each one of these cases? Well, the answer, of course, is in the design. But what is the nature of design for these assistant apps? Well, Orrin Jacobs of Pullstring coined this phrase, interactive screenwriting, which I think fits perfectly what we're trying to build with these assistant apps. When you build an assistant app, it's kind of like you're writing a screenplay, like for a movie or a TV show where you're writing dialogue, except you get to write lines 1, 3, 5, and 7, and somebody you have no control over gets to write lines 2, 4, 6, and 8. And you have to use that to come together with a beautiful experience. And to do that, you have to pull together design elements from 2 different disciplines. One is the linear narrative design. That's what we learn about character, storytelling, and dialogue from books, TV shows, and movies. But you have to merge that with what we learn about from interactive design, what we get from games and mobile web app design, things where we learn about creativity, engagement, and retention. So we need to bring those things together. So let's talk about how we do that here. We looked at all of our assistant apps and we found out the element that they had in common, the ones that got the most retention, is they had a really strong persona. And so we wanted to build that for our app. So what we did is we actually thought about you, what would you might want out of the app. We benefited from having a marketing team that we could work with, but you don't need a marketing team, and really sat down and understood the brand attributes and the design principles. And from that, we distilled the style guide. And this style guide helped us write the dialogue for our assistant app. There were actually several of us writing dialogue, and by actually having a guide like this, I literally had a version of this that we kept up while we were writing dialogue. It kept the persona tight and crisp, even though different people were writing. So just to tell you, we also wanted to launch for the phone, so we knew we wanted both visual and eyes-free experience. And so we wanted to make sure we had the similar content, so one assistant, but similar content. So the chat bubbles are a subset of the spoken text. And that's because we could use suggestion chips, which we just fell in love with as an easy way to navigate through your assistant app. Users didn't have to guess at what our app could do. We could put the most prominent things there and users could zip through very quickly. We also found that a visual description Even in a very data-heavy app like this, a visual description really helped bring more life. So wow, that was a whirlwind tour of design for conversational apps. There's way more to be said about it. I hope you'll take an opportunity to drill into more of the sessions here at I/O about that, or catch them on YouTube after. But I'm going to turn it over to Adam, who's going to talk about actually building these things. Adam.
Thanks, Brad. So I work on Google's GTech team, and our mission is actually to help developers and partners like you launch on the Assistant. So I couldn't be more excited to be here today to show some of these awesome new features that we're launching and hopefully motivate you to go try it out yourself. So a couple slides back, Brad showed some really cool screenshots of this Assistant app for Google I/O that let you reserve a seat and sign in. And today I'm actually going to try to build it with you right now. So let's look at some of the steps that we took to do that and that you could try yourself. So first, we create a project on the Actions console, and this is kind of like the home for the Assistant app. We then connect a natural language tool like API.ai. Now, we really like API.ai. It's a world-class natural language understanding tool. But if you have your own natural language understanding tool that's best in class, you can also connect that right to our APIs. We then connect a webhook, which allows us to perform back-end processing, business logic, and connect to APIs. Again, we like Node.js, but you can use any web server. Once you have all these kind of basic integration points set up, you need to test it out. So we provide a web simulator, which makes it really easy to do local development. But it's really important to always actually test on a real device. So just by clicking Test in the Actions console, you can immediately try it out on your Google Home, your Android, or iPhone. So once we have all that done, we want to enhance it for mobile using some of the visual responses that Brad talked about. So we can do that with API.ai and with our webhook. And then finally, we enable that seamless sign-in flow and the ordering experience by integrating with the Transactions API. But wait a minute, so once we've gotten all this done, how does it actually happen that a user can say something to the Assistant and it triggers your app and all the magic happens? Well, let's take a look into that. So what happens is the user says something like, talk to Google I/O 17 to their Assistant-enabled device like Google Home, and the speech is streamed through to the Assistant and transcribed as text. The Assistant then applies natural language understanding, ranking, it uses our knowledge graph, and it uses the user's context to understand the user's query and realize that the I/O app is the right service to fulfill that request. So it invokes the I/O app's API.ai agent, and the API.ai agent understands it against an intent defined there that you've defined. It then calls the webhook to perform business logic to talk to the I/O API and get some data, and formulates a conversational response, which is sent all the way back through to API.ai to the Assistant and out to the user. Cool, so that's how it works, and let's get into some of the details of how we build it. So we mentioned that the Actions console is kind of like the starting point, and we're really excited about this. We launched it yesterday, and it's a really focused way to kind of develop and manage your Assistant app. So the three main things that it does is, one, allowing you to configure and set up the metadata and the directory listing for your Assistant app, and branding information. It then allows you to manage the testing and deployment process in a fine-grained way. And then once live, it gives you analytics so that you can track how it's doing out in the real world with real users. Then we connect it to API.ai or another natural language tool. So in API.ai, the kind of main thing that we do is we define intents and entities. So intents basically model user queries so that we can understand in a structured way what the user wants. Entities are sort of structured packets of text that let us extract meaning from the user's request. So once we've gotten these defined, we can then write responses to user requests inline in the API.ai tool. And so now that we have our kind of basic model set up, we can use training in API.ai to improve the dialogue model over time. So the example here is for the Google I/O app. If the user were to say, what Android sessions are there, API.ai is going to understand that that maps to the list session intent. And it's going to send a request down to the webhook and trigger the list session function there. So let's look at the webhook. Now, again, you can build a webhook using any web server framework, but we like Node.js, and we like it so much we built a client library that makes it easier to interact with. So you can get that just with one command, npm install actions on Google. And basically, we have a bit of boilerplate, and we have a handler for this list session intent, list topics intent. And you can see there, all we're doing is we're calling the Google I/O API, getting a structured set of categories, and then formulating a conversational response. The topics covered are ... Now that all this stuff is set up, again, we want to test it out. So we have this web simulator, and it's newly updated to provide an interface for testing things visually and for testing a voice-only environment. And again, it's super important to actually test on device. So just by clicking Test in Actions console, you can immediately take your device and say, talk to my app, and you're going to be able to test it out just like that. OK, so I'm going to go over to my Demo 1 machine, and we're going to actually try this out with the real I/O app. So this is the Actions console, and we can see it's already set up with the I/O demo app. We've got some app information set up there, which is basically branding information. And it's already connected to an API.ai project. And we can go edit on API.ai right now. And we have some intents already set up. We have a welcome intent, which handles the case where the user triggers the app. We have the choose session intent, which lets the user get details about a session and a couple others. So I've been around I/O yesterday, and I heard some developers wondering what the free stuff was this year. So why don't we make this app a little bit more useful and make it so that the user could just say to their phone anytime, hey, what's the swag at I/O, and get a useful response. So to do that, we would just create a intent. And we can call it the swag intent, and add a query. What's the swag at I/O? And right there in the tool, we can define a response. It's a Google Home and $700 in cloud credits. Awesome. And so we just hit save. We go to the Actions on Google integration, and we click test. And just like that, we can try this out in our web simulator. So we say talk to I/O demo, and we have to log in. And it invokes this app, and we can say, what's the swag at I/O? And it's a Google Home and 700 in cloud credits. Awesome. So now that we have kind of some of the basic wiring set up, we can talk about making this work really nicely on mobile. So back here. So to make it work really nicely on mobile, we want to add visual responses with API.ai and with our webhook. So API.ai provides a built-in card building interface. And this is really nice. It lets us easily define cards and chips and carousels and lists. It also can then send that request down to the webhook, which will enable you to create dynamic responses. So that's a really nice, useful feature we've added. Let's look at how we do it from the webhook. So there's two really important things in this code that you see. The first one is that we're checking whether the user has a screen. So this is super important because we need to be aware of the user's modality, of their context, and tailor our experience accordingly. So if the user has a screen, we show a rich card that's populated with data about the session. OK, so now I can head back over to the machine and show adding that right into the I/O app. Looks like there's a delay. So heading back over to the Demo 1 machine. Great. OK, so we have this session this intent that handles the moment when the user has asked for information, specific information about a session. So this is the choose session intent. And what we can do is add suggestion chips right there with the API.ai response builder. So we add some suggestion chips, and we'll add that reserve a seat chip. And we can add some others like next session, other topics, and hit save. Now to add that rich card that's dynamically populated, we need to turn over to the webhook and update it. So this is the webhook code. And right here we have essentially like a controller for our app. So it has a pointer to each of the intents in API.ai that triggers a function in the Node.js code. So the choose session intent is here. And we can see that right now it's just doing a very simple thing. It's calling the IO API, and it's creating a simple text response. So we have that code that we showed before prepared here, and we can add it in. And we're checking whether there's screen output, whether the user has a screen. And if they do, then we add this rich response. Otherwise, we can fall back on this text response. OK, and my webhook will automatically update. And I can go and update and test. So now we're heading back to the simulator. And let's say I'm interested in the what's new in Android session. So I'll get this rich card with a link and with the suggestion chips. So that was pretty easy, right? OK, so the last part then, heading back into the deck, is to add this transactional experience where the user can sign in and they can actually make an order. So we are so excited about the Transactions API. It released for developer preview yesterday, so you can start building with it now. And really what it does is it lets you accept purchases and orders from your users with your app. And we make this a great experience on the assistant with three main things. The first is providing a seamless built-in experience for sharing payments and identity information between the user and the app. Once the user has sort of gotten this information and approved the purchase, we then give you a way to re-engage, because you've now sent the user a receipt, and we can send updates to that receipt that manifest as notifications for the user. So you can actually re-engage and get the user back into your app in that way. Now, to integrate with the Transactions API, there are 5 main steps. So first, building out a basket or a shopping cart. And this can be as simple as a suggestion chip, like in the IO app, or it could be as complicated as a menu ordering experience with lots of different choices and customizations. During that cart assembly process, you might need some more information about the user. You might need to know what's their delivery address. This lets you set price and service availability, et cetera. So we give you an API to request that. Once your order is all set up, you need to propose it to the user and get their authorization. So we provide a propose order API that lets the user preview what you're asking them to buy and approve it. Once they've approved it, you need to confirm the order. So let them know that it's active and send them a receipt. So we provide a confirm order API for that. So lastly, many transactional experiences require the user's identity. And so we provide the ability to integrate with an OAuth 2 web server and provide a seamless login flow for the user. So let's take a deeper look into that. Many of you hopefully are familiar with OAuth 2. It's pretty standard. And basically, to set it up with Actions on Google, you go to the Actions console and you configure the usual OAuth 2 stuff, client ID, client secret, auth URL, et cetera, there. And that lets us know how to talk to your server. And then in dialog, you call an API to trigger the sign-in flow. So you can do that from API.ai or from the webhook. Now, once the user's signed in, you want to propose the order. So this snippet of code shows a propose order API call. And what we're doing here is we're building a structured order object. We're populating the line item with the session title. We're saying, hey, the price is 0. And then we're calling the ask for transaction decision API to propose the order. Once the order's been proposed, we get a new request saying, hey, the user accepted the order. Now you need to confirm it. So this snippet of code shows confirming the order. And here we're building a structured order update. We say, hey, the status is confirmed. We provide a receipt. And then we send it along to the user as a receipt, just like any other visual response. OK, one more time going back to the machine, and we're going to actually add all this into our app. So where we left off is we had this suggestion chip reserve a seat, but we don't have any way to handle it. So we need a new intent to handle the case where the user taps that chip. So we can create the reserve a seat intent, and it'll be triggered when the user says reserve a seat. And then what we want to do is immediately call the sign-in API. So there's just a little bit of code that we need to put into API.ai to trigger that. And we can just add it here and hit save. So with that, we're calling the sign-in API, which will log in the user. Now, to make this really work, again, we need to hook up our OAuth 2 server to the project. So going back into the console, we can see how we did that. So we have this account linking section, and we can edit it. And we see that it's pre-filled, but we have the standard stuff, client ID, client secret. There's a couple extra steps that we take in our OAuth 2 server to make the integration really seamless, and it's easy to do, and we highly recommend everyone does it. OK, so what do we have? We have an intent to handle when the user says reserve a seat. We trigger the sign-in API. But what happens when the user signs in? Well, we have this intent set up that basically passes that event through to our webhook. And what we're going to do then is call the propose order API. Once the order is proposed and the user accepts it, we get another request to API.ai saying, hey, the user accepted this. You need to confirm the order. And that comes through and is matched by the handle order intent here. That's, again, is just passed right through to the webhook, which calls the confirm order API. And then we're done. So the last thing to do is just add this code into our webhook. So going back in, we see we have the controller for our app, and we have the handle sign-in and handled order handlers. And we see that they're empty right now. So we can add in that code. So handle sign-in, again, this should look familiar. We're building an order object, populating it with session data, and proposing it to the user with this call right here. For handle decision, this is where the user has already accepted the order, and we want to provide a receipt. So we can add that code, and it should automatically update. So that's it. That's all it took. And now we can actually test this out on my Demo 2 device. Just have to update the project. Cool. So we're just going to go over to the Demo 2 device, and we can say IO demo. What's new in Android? We can tap the reserve a seat chip. OK, well, that's why it's a developer preview. We can do one thing, and I think it'll make it work. Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate it. So I think it'll work if I can just do this. Might have been user error. OK, so let's try it one more time. IO demo. What's new in Android? There we go. Cool. And we see with just 2 taps, I'm creating an account on this server. And we propose the order to the user. What's new in Android? $0. I approve. And we get our receipt. Cool. So that's all it took. We did that in like 10 minutes. Built a transactional experience, seamlessly signed in the user. It's pretty awesome stuff. So let me jump back in for just a quick recap on what we did. So we created a rich mobile experience for finding out about I/O sessions. We added a suggestion chip to let the user reserve a seat. And we connected an OAuth 2 server to enable a seamless sign-in flow. And finally, we used the Transactions API to propose the reservation and get the user's acceptance and send a receipt. And we did this again in like 10 minutes. So I believe that all of you could go right now and add it and build apps yourselves that do the same exact thing. And I'm so excited to see what you do. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Vera.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Adam. I'm Vera, and I'm here to tell you how your app can be discovered once you build. I have the opportunity to talk to partners like you every day, and this is one of the primary things that we hear. Let's actually start by admitting that we live in a pretty amazing time in technology. People are asking computers to do things for them. They're asking them to help them plan their day, to get from one place to another, and to even clean their apartment in a mess. And they're asking for the little things, like my little brother, despite being 22, recently asked the Google Assistant how to make scrambled eggs for our family. And so we know that if you're building a productivity app or a recipe app or a smart home app, your users are out there looking for you. And if there's one thing that we've learned about discovery over the years, it's that the best way to find users who want your service is for them to find you. And think about it. This is actually a very different world. No longer does a user have to know that your app exists, or have to download it, or even have to set it up. All they have to do is say, OK, Google, or long press on home on their mobile device, and they have access to your service, and that's on over 100 million plus devices. And I'll be honest, we're still getting started. There's a ton of work to do, but that's a pretty exciting thing. Our goal at Google is to help connect you to your users. So today we're starting with 3 primary ways of enabling discovery of your Assistant app through the Google Assistant. The first is in dialogue, so directly in the conversation with the user. The second is through the Assistant directory, which we announced yesterday. And then the third is through links that you can share. So let's actually start with in dialogue, so directly in the conversation with the user. The most reliable way that a user can get to your Assistant app is by explicitly asking for it, meaning we have a set of pre-established phrases, things like talk to, speak to, ask, or at, that once said, with the name of your Assistant app, we introduce you, and then you own the dialogue end to end. A user can also deep link directly to an answer. So to extend the demo that Adam just did, a user can say, hey, Google, let's talk to Google I/O 17. And then we introduce the app. And they can also say something like, hey, Google, ask Google I/O 17 about what was announced. And we'll introduce the app and then take the user directly to the answer. So some partner examples of this are, hey, let's speak to Domino's, and then we introduce Domino's, and then Domino's comes in, you can order a pizza, my brother might need this in case the eggs go awry. Or, hey, Google, Akinator, and we introduce a great game on the platform. Or, hey, Google, I love this app, ask Dr. Doggy if dogs can eat chocolate, and we introduce Dr. Doggy for what could be an urgent question. The way to think about explicit triggering is very similar to typing a URL and getting to a website, or tapping on an app icon and then going inside the app. The next way to introduce your Assistant app in dialogue is through implicit triggering. So I'm really excited about this one because this actually starts showing the promise of the platform. We know that users are asking the Google Assistant a whole set of things. They're asking, hey, tell me a joke, or I want to play a game, or I want to work out. And we at Google look at all the apps that can fulfill on that and suggest some to the user. So this already works today. You can say, hey, Google, I want to work out, and we introduce FitStar, which has a great guided workout. It's super easy to be able to do this. All you have to do is add an invocation grammar to your app in API.ai or whatever natural language solution they use. So I want to show you what that looks like because it's super easy. So we're here in the intent, the swag intent that Adam already created, and you can see his what's the swag at I/O. Let's say you want to add something a little bit more colloquial, like what's the freebie at I/O? Type it in. You can scroll down. The answer is still the same. You guys got a home and 700 in cloud credits. It's awesome. Make sure the conversation, you hit save, and that's really it. And you're able to test it by going into integrations, actions on Google. You make sure you select the swag intent here. And then once you hit test, that's it. We can do the test later, but basically what happens is you say, what's the freebie at I/O? And then we introduce the Google I/O 17 app. Let's say you've never heard of it before. That's pretty cool. I didn't know there was an Assistant app that is about Google I/O. And then the Google I/O 17 app is able to say, your freebie at I/O is the Google Home and $700 in app credits. Awesome. If we go back to the slides. One of the primary questions that we get about implicit triggering is, how are you guys going to rank? We're going to be looking at a ton of different signals, and it's still very early, and we'll iterate on this significantly over time. But one of the primary things we're going to look at is the quality of your app, as well as things like the user's context or their preferences. And again, we'll experiment significantly over time. The next way for you to grow discovery of your Assistant app is through the Assistant directory. So we launched this with the goal of letting a user try out new apps, browse apps, as well as set the preferences for their personal assistant. The way that a user gets to the Assistant directory on Android is by long pressing on Home and then tapping the upper right-hand corner icon. On iOS, they get there by going to the Assistant app, and then same thing, tapping on the upper right-hand corner icon. And there's also a web link for the directory. So once the user is in the directory, they can scroll different categories, they can tap on an app, they can try the app directly there, they can rate the app, and then they can also set their own personal preferences with the app. So we have this concept of voice shortcuts. This is where a user can go directly to your Assistant app. So I have mine set as, hey Google, it's chill out time, and then Netflix starts playing on my Chromecast. And then I have another one, which I love, which is, hey Google, it's party time, and then my Philips Hue bulbs turn on, and then Can't Touch This starts playing on my Google Home device on Spotify, which is pretty awesome. The way that you can improve visibility of your app within the directory is by, one, again, keep the quality of your app really, really high. This is what's going to help with both ranking and with reviews. And then two, submit rich images, well-written descriptions. This is what's going to encourage a user to try out your app directly in the directory and then re-engage with it again in the future. Cool. The third way of growing discovery of your Assistant app is through links that you can share. So you have a role here too. You have the ability to promote and grow awareness of your Assistant app. We encourage you to do this by doing things like, one, share through social media. Encourage your users to take this viral. Two, promote through your own owned and operated properties. So link to your sites or to your Android or iOS apps. Encourage users to use your service across different platforms. And then three, encourage press to drive traffic to your Assistant app. Allow other sites to link to it. Enable awareness that way. So let's go to device 3, and I can show you what that looks like as well. As I mentioned, you get to the Assistant directory by long pressing on Home. You tap on the upper right-hand corner. This is what the directory looks like. And we scroll down to Education and Reference, Talk to Google I/O. This is the landing page within the directory. You can hit Share, and let's actually tweet it. And this is live, which is awesome. We can say, woo, we're live at I/O. And actually tweet it. Cool. Once a user taps on that link, they go to directly to your landing page within the directory. Awesome. Go back to the slides, please. So as a recap, the way that you can grow discovery of your Assistant app is, one, in dialogue, so directly in the conversation with the user, both implicitly and explicitly. Two, through the Assistant directory. And then three, through links that you share. So we know if you're building a recipe app that helps you cook breakfast for your family, or a fitness app that helps someone keep their routine, your users are out there looking for you. And our goal at Google is to help connect you to your users. And with that, I'll hand it back to Brad to wrap up.
Awesome. Thank you. We've shown you a ton of stuff today, building conversational experience for eyes free in the phone, doing transactions, and getting your app discovered. You're now ready to participate in our app development challenges. Tons of great prizes. I encourage you to do that. But let's keep this conversation going. We're going to be at the Assistant booth, which is kind of in the main area on the walkway there. Come by and talk to us with more questions, ton of other talks, and just a special thanks to Sachit, who built the Assistant app that we see here today. So again, thank you very much.